All right, let's continue with some exercises to elasticities, and let's calculate some more elasticities. But in the next couple of questions, we first need to always draw the inverse demand function. So here we have one, which is P equals 6 minus Q. So make it a little bit smaller. So this will be, so the intercept for the first one is 6 minus Q, so it has a slope of -1. So that means it goes from 6 to 6. And the other one is 5 minus 0.5 Q. So insert shapes. So that means because this starts at 5, but because the slope is only 1/2, it goes from 5 to 10. So okay, so now we are supposed to calculate for the two demand curves the point elasticity of price at the price of 4. Okay. So if you remember, the price elasticity of demand was given by the function dq with respect to q over dp over p, and then we said, that's the same as dq over dp times p over q, but this first term is equal to 1 over the slope times p over q. So this slope here is -1/2, and the slope of the other one is -1. Okay, so now here we have the elasticity of 1 over -1, where the slope is 1, so that's -1 times 4 over 2, so we get -2. For the other one, 1 over the slope is -0.5, so 1 over the slope is -0.2, but everything else is the same, times 4 over 2, so now here we get -4. So that means at this point, you can say that the flatter curve, the curve or the inverse demand function, which is flatter, must have the higher elasticity. Okay, so the correct answers are -2 and -4. Okay, so we have again 1, 4 minus Q, 8 minus 2Q. So let's draw these as well. Insert shapes. 4 minus Q starts at 4. Slope -1. Let's make it a little bit bigger. 8 minus 2Q. So 8, slope -2, so it will intersect at 4. And we are supposed to calculate the point price elasticity of demand for Q equals 2. Okay, so now we need it once here. That's a heart. And once here. Okay, so the formula again is 1 over the slope times P over Q. Okay, so here the slope is negative 2, here it is negative 1. So let's start with the first one. So we do 1 over negative 1, times 2 over 2, because here price is 2 over 2, so mine times 2 over 2, which is 1. So here the point price elasticity of demand is unitary elastic, meaning that a 1% decrease in price corresponds to a 1% increase in quantity demanded. Now let's do the other one. Elasticity here, the slope is negative 2. So 1 over negative 2 is negative 1/2 times 4 over 2, it's also negative 1. So in other words, whenever you go to the midpoint of a linear demand function, the price elasticity of demand is always unitary, negative 1. Okay, so now we have 4 minus q and 8 minus q. So the slope is twice the same. It's a different diagram. So 4 minus q goes from 4 to 4. And the other one is 8 minus q. Calculate for all two demand curves the point price elasticity for q equals 2, and then for the price of 2. Okay, so let's start with the quantities here. So basically we have to calculate it at those 3 points. Okay, now actually let's call them A, B, and C. Okay, so at A, okay, slope negative 1, so 1 over the slope, 1 over negative 1 is negative 1, times 6 over 2, that's negative, and then negative 1/3, negative 3. Okay, so at this point the elasticity is negative 3. Now at B, we already know at point B, this is in the middle of the linear demand function. So we know it should be 1, but let's just double check. Okay, 1 over negative 1, 1 over the slope. So we get negative 1 times 2 over 2, it's 1. So that's negative 1. So let's do C. Slope negative 1, so the elasticity is 1 over negative 1. But now we have the price 2 and the quantity is 6, so 2 over 6. So now we get the negative 1/3. So that means in the demand function, this part up here, a little bit big, but up to the middle, this is the elastic part, meaning that if you lower the price here by a certain relative change, the relative response in quantity demanded is always greater than the relative change in price. And if you go down here, this is what we call the inelastic part, meaning that the relative response in quantity demanded is always less than the relative change in price. And down here in the middle, that's when things are unitary elastic. And here again, the upper part would be the elastic part, the lower part would be the inelastic part. Okay, so now let's continue with a couple of multiple choice questions. So the Chinese people get richer, as a result of which Chinese buy more beef, cars and strawberries. What can we say about beef, cars and strawberries? So the income elasticity of demand is positive for these goods. Yeah, that's definitely the case, because if the income goes up, so we have the income elasticity of demand, and if you remember, the income elasticity of demand is equal to the relative change in demand over the relative change in income. And apparently what happens is that this is positive and this is positive, so the income elasticity is positive. And beef, cars and strawberries could be normal or luxury goods, and we often define normal goods with an income elasticity of demand of greater than 0, and luxury goods often when the income elasticity is greater than 1. So B is correct too. So it could be, so here we say elasticity, income elasticity of demand greater than 0. We say normal good. But when we observe that the elasticity is actually greater than 1, it's still normal, but then it is a luxury good. And this is by convention. I mean, you may observe an elasticity of greater than 1. We wouldn't necessarily associate it with, like, I don't know, jewelry or so. The Chinese people get richer and richer, as a result of which Chinese buy less rice, bicycles and oolong tea. So what can we say about bicycles, rice and oolong tea? So now it's a little bit the same question, just the other way around. So the income elasticity of demand is positive for these three goods. No, it's obviously negative. B, rice, bicycles and oolong tea are inferior goods. That's exactly true. Both A and B are correct? No. So the income elasticity of demand is obviously negative because now this goes up, but now in this case this would go down, so it's becoming negative. Okay, so the average income increases from 20,000 to 22,000 per year, and the quantity demanded per year increases from 5 to 6,000 units. Which of the following is correct using the percentage formula? Okay, so we have income, so we are talking about the income elasticity of demand. So the relative change in quantity demanded is an increase from 5,000 to 6,000. So that is a plus 20% increase. Then income has increased from 20,000 to 22,000. That's an increase of 10%. So the income elasticity of demand in this case is 2. So the demand is price elastic. Gotta be careful, it's about income elasticity. So that's wrong. The good is inferior. That's wrong because income goes up and demand goes up. And income elasticity of demand is 2, and that's definitely correct. So the good has a positive income elasticity of demand but that's actually also correct. So the good has a positive income elasticity of demand. So I gotta change that and say, make it negative. Okay, so now this is clearly wrong. Okay, guys, so sometimes I'll make some mistakes in my problem sets. This would be such an example. But anyhow, so now it is clear. The income elasticity of demand is 2, and obviously that's a positive value. So D, if it says here positive, would have been correct too. So now the price decreases from 2,000 to 1,800, which is a 10% decrease, and quantity demanded increases from 5,000 to 6,000, which is an increase in quantity demanded by 20%. Which of the following is correct? Okay, so the elasticity is the relative change in quantity demanded, 5,000 to 6,000, that's plus 20%. And the price decreases from 2,000 to 1,800, that's a reduction by negative 10%. So the price elasticity of demand is negative 2. The price elasticity of demand is negative 2, that's correct. The good is inferior, and we can't comment on that one because we don't know how it responds to income changes. And the two other, we don't have to worry about income elasticity because all the information we have relates to prices and quantity demanded. So if the price elasticity of demand is negative 1, then a fall in price reduces revenue, leaves revenues unchanged, increases revenue, or increases revenue or reduces cost. Well, the answer is it leaves revenues unchanged. So maybe we can illustrate it by going to an example that we did earlier. So okay, let's take again the demand from 8 to 8. And in order to illustrate it, that when you lower the price, when the price elasticity of demand is negative 1, I quickly use the arc elasticity because that is a little bit more useful for this specific case. So now the midpoint is here at 4. So we know that the point price elasticity of demand here is negative 1. So here I know the elasticity is negative 1. So let's say we use the arc elasticity. Imagine we lower the price from 5 to 6. I'm sorry, from 5 to 3. So imagine we have here an arc So we lower the price from 5 to 3. And we use the arc elasticity. So that means if the price goes down from 5 to 3, then quantity demanded goes up from 3 to 5. Okay, so we lower the price from 5 to 3, and then we know quantity demanded goes up from 3 to 5. Okay, so now what is the arc elasticity? So the arc elasticity is the new quantity minus the old over the midpoint. So that is 5 minus 3 over 4. That's the relative change in quantity demanded. And now we divide by the relative change in the price. Again, the new price is now 3 minus the old price, 3 minus 5 over the midpoint, 4. So now this is 2 over 4 or 1/2, and this is negative 2 over 4, so negative 1/2. So we get here an arc elasticity of -1. So what is now important is whenever you calculate the arc elasticity, then the midpoint of the arc gives you the same point price elasticity of demand. So the arc goes, on the curve from 5 to 3. So then if we take the midpoint, the price of 4, then we get the point price elasticity of 1, which is the same as the arc elasticity if we make it symmetrically around that point. So it is symmetric, so basically we go 1 up, 1 down, and that arc elasticity gives you always the same as the point price elasticity. So arc elasticity of this is also -1. So again, the arc elasticity gives you always the same value as the point price elasticity of demand in the middle of the arc. Okay, but the question is, how does that affect the total revenue? Okay, so at the old price of 5, total revenue was 5 times 3, which is 15. The new total revenue, the new total revenue at the price of 3, we have the quantity of 5, so we get 3 times 5, which is also 15. So the total revenue doesn't change. What happens is, by changing the price, where the price elasticity of demand is 1, like by this arc elasticity, well, we lose this area here. So we lose 3 units that we now sell at a lower price, but then, we gain 2 more units that we sell at the new price, and those 2 areas cancel each other out. So for that reason, the revenue remains unchanged. Okay, so now let's talk about the cross price elasticity. If the that should be cross price elasticity. Actually, let's put it here. So if the cross price elasticity of demand is -3, okay, so what does that mean again? So the cross price elasticity is the relative change in demand of good A over a relative change in price of B. Okay, so that is -3. Okay, so now, are these substitutes or complements? Let's go through an example. Assume they are substitutes. Then if the price for, let's say, apples goes down, well, that means we will now consume more apples, but then we obviously eat less pears. So that also would go down. So they go in the same direction. So if it's a substitute, we should get a positive cross-price elasticity of demand. Okay, so now let's check if it's a complement. So let's say we have the peanut butter and jelly. So if the price for peanut butter goes down, that means quantity demanded for peanut butter goes up. But now we also consume always more jelly because that's what we eat together with it. So if the price for peanut butter goes down, we start eating more jelly and demand more jelly. So now we have an inverse relationship and we get something negative. So the answer must be that we are dealing with complements. So the products are substitutes? No. The products are substitutes? No. The products are complements? Yeah. And the demand is cross-price elastic. Yeah, it is elastic because the absolute value is greater than 1. So C is the correct answer. If it were less than 1, we would consider it inelastic. Okay, let's do 7. The income elasticity of cars is positive 2. And income increases by 20%. Car sales were 10,000 units. What will they be now? Okay, so we deal with the income elasticity, and we know that the income elasticity is 2. So we know that the income elasticity is the relative change in demand over the relative change in income. And we know that this value is positive 2. Okay, so what do we know? So we know that the relative change in demand is 2, and we know the relative change in income increases by 20%. Okay, good. So here in the denominator, we have plus 20%. That's the information that we have. And car sales were 10,000 units. So that means that the relative change in demand should have gone up by 40%, because otherwise the income elasticity of demand couldn't be 2. So car sales were 10,000 units and went up by 40%. So that means the new car sales must be 14,000. Okay. A negative price elasticity of demand means demand is price elastic, demand is price inelastic. No. Well, the demand curve is downward sloping. That's what it means. Because all that says is that there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded, meaning if one goes up, the other one goes down. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Price increases from 10 to 12, and the price elasticity of demand is negative 0.5. The quantity demanded was 50,000 units. Okay, so that's now similar to question 7. So let's recall the price elasticity of demand is given by the relative change in demand over relative change in price. and this entire ratio is negative 0.5. Okay, so now what information do we have? Prices increases from 10 to 12. So that means we have a relative change in price, which is 20%. And the quantity demanded was 5,000 units. So for this term to be negative 0.5, this needs to be negative 10%. So that means if the price goes up, the quantity demanded should fall by 10%, which is the new one. The new quantity demand is 4,500. If demand is price inelastic, okay, then an increase in price must raise profits. We don't know about profits, but we know about revenue. An increase in price decreases revenue? No. An increase in price, of course, increases revenue. So that's correct. And we can go back to our example here to illustrate this. So let me quickly remove all the okay. So if this is our demand function, so what we said is that the elastic part is up here. So up here, this one, this green part is the elastic part. The inelastic part is down here. And in the middle, we have things that are unitary elastic. So now let's say a firm operates, okay, let's just write that quickly here. So here, the elasticity is greater in absolute terms than -1. And actually less than -1. I'm sorry, greater, that's correct. And down here, it is inelastic, so the elasticity is in absolute terms, so those vertical bars means absolute terms, less than 1. And here in the middle, the elasticity is equal to -1. Okay, or in absolute terms 1. So let's say, we can just verify what happens if we use a numerical example. So let's say the price is currently 1. Well, if the price is currently 1, then quantity demanded is 7. Okay, so now total revenue at the price of 1. So total revenue when the price is 1 is 7. 7 times 1, or 1 times 7. So now let's say we increase the price, so we operate on that inelastic part. So let's say the new total revenue associated with a price of 2. So we increase the price. So if it's 2, so now we lose some quantity, but now we sell 6 units at a price of 2, which is 12. And again, what we gain is this area here. So we gain 6 times 1, but we lose this rectangle down there, which is 1. So we gain 6, we lose 1, the net gain is 5. So that's why. So if the demand is price inelastic, an increase in price increases revenues. Okay, so the next question. For an inferior good with a downward sloping demand curve, the price elasticity of demand is negative. That's correct, because if it's a downward sloping demand curve, the price elasticity of demand is always negative. The income elasticity of demand is negative. So if it's an inferior good, A sounds pretty much correct. The price elasticity of demand is positive. No, that's nonsense. The price elasticity of demand is negative. Yeah, that's correct. But the income elasticity of demand is positive. No, then it would be a normal good. The price elasticity of demand is positive. So no, it is A. Okay, so question 12. For a normal good with a downward sloping demand curve, okay, so now again, same question. The price elasticity is always negative, so it needs to be A or C. But now the income elasticity of demand is positive because it's a normal good. So in question 12, the correct answer is C. Okay, let's stop here before the video gets too long, and then let's work on some more questions also related now to welfare analysis. But let's do that in the next video.